This podcast is recorded at the Zone Gym studio.
You're listening to the Raw Reality Podcast hosted by Tori Story and Fit with Lily. This episode is sponsored by FODBODS. Use code RAW15 for 15% off all products at fodbods.com.
Hello guys and welcome back to the podcast. Today we've just got myself and my coach Bec Cameron, which I'm so excited to have this discussion. We've had a few people request to get you on, which is so fun. Basically just going to be talking about everything bodybuilding, coaching as well, running an online business, general fitness knowledge, as well as women's health and menstrual cycle. Bec has been in the industry for 14 years, which is a very, very long time, and running her own business for 10 years. She's also competed multiple times herself. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't believe we're only just doing this now.
I know. We're actually, Feb, we've ticked over 3 years coaching together.
Wow. Happy anniversary.
Yeah, literally. I know it's taken a while, but we found the time to get in the studio at the same time. We're both very busy people, so it can be hard to match it up.
Absolutely. But happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get straight into the quick fire questions just so people can get to know you a little bit better. I've sent these to you, so hopefully you're good to go. Number one is your star sign.
My star sign is Cancer.
Do you know the traits of that? Do you follow astrology?
Yeah, I do actually. I quite like star signs. I find it very interesting. So the traits are, I guess, like introverted and a bit of a homebody is a big one, which I think is definitely true. Like I very much need my alone time to recharge, and also like sensitive, but not in a like I get upset easily kind of way, in a like I'm very sensitive to other people's energy and emotions. Like I can really kind of feel that, and just like sensitive to overstimulation and that sort of thing.
Wow. I feel like what month is that?
July.
Okay, I'm meant to be, April. No, I'm meant to be born in June because I'm
right,
like April, but was like 12 weeks early.
Yeah.
So I was like, is it June or July? Either way, I feel like that is like my traits.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go.
Interesting.
Well, if you know much about astrology, you also have kind of like 3 star signs that play a role. Have you heard about that? How there's like the sun, moon and rising?
Oh, I have heard, but I haven't done any research into it.
You should look. You might have a Cancer in you.
Yeah, I feel like I really do.
Yeah.
Next one is describe yourself in 3 words.
Okay, so this is a hard one. I feel as though like every word I thought of was career oriented, and I was like, no, there's more to me than my career. But I think driven is a big one. I think empathetic as well, and resilient.
They're a good combo 3. Your hall pass.
My whole past. So I used to always say Channing Tatum for this.
Stock standard.
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten over that recently, and I really love Glenn Powell. Do you know who that is?
Yes, and I feel like it's his personality as well.
Yeah.
Everything about him.
Yeah,
I do
He's
know.
a vibe.
Any movie he's in, I will watch.
Yeah.
Your favourite food?
Yochi. Easy answer.
Oh, yes, we all love Yochi around here. And last question, what did you want to be growing up?
I wanted to be a lawyer or a writer.
Oh,
Yeah.
a writer.
I know, very random.
So then what pivoted you from going from that into fitness?
Well, I actually studied business and law for 5.5 years. So I ended up, I guess, just working in the legal environment and not really loving it. And I was working in a gym part-time when I was doing all of that. And I'd always been into fitness. Like I played sport since I was like 8 years old or something. And yeah, so I decided to do my PT certificate and just ended up into that.
Right. I swear it just like evolves over time, and like obviously like one interest you're not going to be for the rest of your life, but that also does play a role in your business now too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it definitely taught me a lot of what I know and made me like a much smarter business owner, not just a coach, which I think is like the struggle a lot of people face. Like they know how to coach, but they don't know how to run a business.
Yeah, 100%. Or it's like those people who kind of, you can study set 3 and 4 in year 10, 11. No, 11 and 12 at school.
Oh, can you?
Yeah,
and
you can literally drop out to do that. And it's like, that is great, like for basically getting a head start, but you have no idea the fundamentals of a business. You just know how to coach. So it's like, how do you take that from one level to the next?
Yeah.
Going into bodybuilding, I feel like that's where a lot of, well, especially all of my following know you from, being my coach, bringing me to stage. What got you into the world of bodybuilding, and what year did you start?
So I think I started in 2015 was my first show. And I guess what got me into it, it was just really a natural evolution. Like once I started training in the gym a bit more, like I said, I competed in sports all throughout my life. Like I played volleyball at a decently high level when I was younger, and I started training in the gym when I started working at one, and I did it to improve my volleyball performance. But I think as I started doing my PT cert and I decided I wanted to move into that space, going to trainings, as you would know, is just not really that conducive to PT hours. Like you've got to train late on Tuesday, Thursday night. You've got games all day Saturday. So it just didn't really fit into like when I needed to train my PT clients to be playing sport.
Yeah.
So I guess it was just kind of like, all right, well, this is my sport that is really just revolved around the gym. So it kind of worked into my lifestyle.
Yeah. And then when you kind of moved into bodybuilding, you obviously had to give up volleyball. Yeah. Was that a hard decision to make, or did you feel like your time was done with volleyball?
It was a hard decision because I really did love the team environment, and bodybuilding is obviously a very solo sport. Yeah. You tend to do a lot of things alone, but I did also really like that when it came to bodybuilding, it was very much like me versus me, and all I could control was how much effort that I put into it. Like my other teammates didn't come into play, and it just was different. It was like everything was on me.
You weren't relying on other people. It's similar when I did cheer. You'd have stunts and you'd get conditioning if one person fell. And it's like, we've hit 5 times in a row. Them, like Sally over there has dropped every time. Like, why am I getting in trouble when I've been doing everything perfect? So like, I completely understand that. Bodybuilding is a very solo journey. So with your bodybuilding career, how many shows did you compete in?
So I've done 13 shows in total across 5 seasons.
Okay, 5 seasons.
Yeah, 5 seasons or 4 seasons.
And that is like a long time as well, because it's not like you're doing year after year after year. You've got chunks of time in between that. What would you say was your most memorable part of competing?
Yeah, I guess I've had quite a few memorable moments. I think my first ever show was definitely memorable because I went into that show with obviously no expectations. I had no idea how I was going to go, and I feel like my coach at the time didn't really believe that I was going to do that well either. And I got up in that show and I literally won every category I entered. So I was just like in absolute disbelief on stage. And that was like a really memorable moment because, it was just not what I expected. Yeah. And then I think doing my first IFBB show and again, like clean sweeping that, like that was incredible. I couldn't have hoped for anything more. And competing in Japan was epic as well. I have had so many memorable moments through it.
Yeah, that's really cool. So then what made you the decision to kind of hang up your heels and decide that journey was over?
Yeah, so it's multifaceted. I mean, I want to say never. I might do a Bikini Masters comeback one day. Who knows? But I think with where I was at when I finished like my last season of competing, which was end of 2022. So I'd been going through a few different health issues, and I don't know if you remember this, but I was getting sick all the time.
Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah, like every 4 to 6 weeks, I would have a bacterial infection, and it wasn't even viral. It was always bacterial and like chronic recurring bacterial infections. And I got one in my comp prep. So I had bronchitis in my comp prep, and it just dragged out for so long because I obviously wasn't able to fully rest and let it get better. And I remember just how hard of a grind that was, like pushing through. And I think at that point I was kind of like, all right, after this prep, I need to get to the bottom of these health issues and figure out what is going on and why I keep getting so sick, because it just impacts everything. Like I can't train my best. I can't work my best. So after I stepped off stage, I went and worked with a functional doctor, and we went deep diving into my gut health, which I thought was probably the problem because I kind of tried to address everything else. And spent the next 12 months on a gut protocol, which looked like no intense training, couldn't train more than a 7 RPE, and a low-carb diet, like full gut protocol. So I kind of went through all of that. And then by the time I came out the other end of it, I had got on top of my immune system. So I now haven't been sick for 12 months, which is amazing.
That's insane.
Yeah. And I feel honestly just so healthy. I feel really happy. I feel like my cognitive function is really good, and I'm in just a really good place with like my body image and just intuitively maintaining like with little effort. I just feel confident day to day, and I think I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I want to mess with that and go into another prep, because I just feel so good now, and I know how I was feeling then. I just felt like I don't want to feel that way again.
And you can't work and pursue your career when you're sick and comp prep. Like you can, but it's not going to excel as much as you want it to. And now you're also channeling that competitiveness within you into high rocks and running as well.
Yeah.
Have you gone from training one end bodybuilding to the high rocks and running? Do you feel like your body has changed much through that?
Yeah, I definitely think it has. Like, I have lost some muscle, but I'm at the point of acceptance. At the start, I was so upset about like losing my glutes a little bit when I wasn't training as hard through that gut protocol. And I really struggled with accepting that. But that's exactly it. Like, I feel like I've got to a stage where I've accepted that, and now I'm just really happy with where I'm at. Plus, I'm getting older too. I turned 34 this year, so
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like you just do not seem or look 34 to me.
I don't feel it. But obviously, like biologically, if I
Yeah.
did want to have kids in a few years, it's probably not something I want to kind of put my body through again.
Yeah, that makes
but
sense. Yeah. So what was the year you first competed?
2015.
That's like 10 years ago now. What has been the biggest thing that you've noticed has changed within the bodybuilding world from 10 years ago to now? Is it like size, protocols, the overall competitiveness as well?
Yeah, all of the above, honestly. I think that protocols have changed a lot. When I first did it, it was very bro science. Like, I ate the exact same thing every single day for 16 weeks, to the point I remember I loved salmon and I couldn't eat salmon for like 2 years after my first prep. So that's changed a lot. I think people realize it doesn't have to be that way now. Like, it's not just chicken, broccoli, rice. And the standard has changed immensely as well. Like, the level of muscle mass and conditioning on bikini girls, even at a natural level, it's continuing to improve every single year. So it's much more competitive. I think now you definitely need a really solid foundation of training behind you to be competitive when you first step on stage. Whereas like when I first did it, like it was still kind of a relatively untrained look, was still kind of like the norm, I suppose.
Yeah. Do you reckon that's also why they've brought in Fit Model now to have that like under level as well, because they have also acknowledged that bikini is getting quite big and the standard is just getting better and better. So it's like they almost need that like entry level point to get more people in and not scared away. Because I've had a conversation with a few girls and they love competing, but they're like, I just can't get that big naturally. They're like, genetically, I can't get there. So they don't feel the point in competing anymore. Whereas this new division's coming, it's like, okay, I actually do have opportunity to do well, still prep well, still train well. And that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is why they've done it. And I think as well, they probably have had a lot of feedback that, you know, the bikini criteria bikini criteria is now something that is really hard to achieve naturally, like what they're rewarding in the IFBB. And I don't think the sport as a whole, I don't think it's good for the sport for that to be the case. I think there needs to be something that girls can achieve naturally. Otherwise, like, what are we encouraging?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So what do you think makes a good competitor and versus a great competitor? Is it that just time, or are those little 1% make the big difference?
Yeah, I mean, time obviously accrues, like muscle density takes time to build. But I think a good competitor is someone who is like on when they need to be on, like they're ticking all the boxes in the prep, they're getting the things done. But I think a great competitor is someone that literally lives and breathes this year round and really commits to like intensity in their training, like really trying to get every inch out of themselves, like really focuses on things like recovery and like posing and mobility in their off season, like all those little 1%ers, and just really kind of follows it year round. Like you can still eat out and enjoy meals and be a great competitor, but like you're still very aware of like your food intake and making sure you're kind of ticking those boxes to grow in an off season. Like it's a year round thing if you want to be great.
Yeah, it's having a coach through that off season as well. You see some girls who they reverse correctly with their coach and then they go away for like a few months or that year or so and they're like, okay, I'm ready to prep again. I want to get my coach back. And it's that off season where like literally everything is made and that just unravels throughout the prep as well. So if you're a competitor listening to this, it's like try to be on as much as possible with that flexibility, because I always preach flexibility through the off season. So then when I'm entering a prep, I mentally feel ready and not like I've been so locked in for that whole year and then you have to be locked in for another 6 months. I find having that balance while equally knowing like your goal is end sight.
Yeah, I fully agree with everything you said.
Coaching an ICN client versus IFBB, what would you say is the biggest difference?
Yeah, I guess honestly the main difference is just the level of density and conditioning. I feel like the IFBB bikini look is a little more on par with like ICN fitness. So it's very similar in that respect if we're comparing ICN fitness to IFBB bikini. But then I guess the difference between those two is really just like structure and like your genetic structure as to whether you're more bikini or more fitness.
Yeah. And do you reckon like most people go just have you actually, sorry, backtrack. Have you ever had a client do like multiple rounds of ICN, or do you find most kind of do ICN first year and then move into IFBB?
Yeah, I've definitely had people do multiple rounds of ICN, and I think that nowadays a lot of people do ICN and then they want to move into IFBB. But again, like IFBB, it is a very dense look, so I think it is important to be realistic, and if you don't necessarily have the density. So if we look at you, obviously as an example, you've done years and years of cheer. So you've been an athlete. You already had like some density behind you. Plus you train at such a high intensity that you were able to like grow to the level of being competitive in IFBB within that time frame. But not everyone can do that. So it's not as simple as like, which one do you like? It's like, well, where do you fit?
Yeah.
And NBA as well now is a little bit more in between those two looks, I feel, which is good because then it gives somewhere for natural competitors to go.
I also feel like NBA's run very similar to an IFBB show in like the production and things like that. How did you manage throughout your preps to prep clients as well as compete yourself? Because I remember literally my very first comp, you came to my show in wet tan in your pajamas, and I'm pretty sure you just came off the back of being sick and then you're competing the next day. How did you find you balance that? Because you also have brain fog, low energy, and your whole prep is like those last few weeks are very selfish, but you never once felt like you were also competing yourself.
Yeah, I think that, that show, that was such an interesting situation because I was originally going to do the Queensland show because our shows are on the same day, like the IFBB Vic and ICN Vic, but then they moved IFBB to the next day and I was like, oh, should I do it? So that's why, I ended up just coming to ICN in my pajamas covered in tan, which honestly, like I feel as though when I'm on prep, I am so hyper productive and my entire life is bodybuilding. So I don't feel that it does need to take away from my clients because even like when I'm doing cardio, I'll be responding to the messages that I can respond to while I'm doing it. Like I'll just be super on, and I feel like I get so much achieved in a day when I'm on prep because everything is like so routine, like down to a T. So, I've never really found it has a negative impact, and I've never really had any feedback from clients that it's been negative for them either, like you just kind of said. But I have had coaches say that they really struggle to manage both because it is a selfish time and they want to really focus on themselves. But I don't know. I've just always thought my clients come first, and if I can make my prep work as well, then amazing. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that is very fair. What is the biggest piece of advice you'd give to a first-time competitor?
I think set the foundations first in terms of taking time to build muscle, doing a proper off-season or prep before the prep with a coach before you dive into a competition prep. And that's not just to build muscle. It's also to just set the foundations in terms of like where your metabolism is at, like how much food you're eating to make sure you're in a good place to diet down from and to make sure your relationship with food is good as well before you go into a prep.
Yeah, I think having a good relationship with food is huge because that can hide throughout prep because you have no choice but to be on, and then it comes out like double the amount after post-show, which can be like the hardest part to navigate through it all. In saying all that, like kind of flip it, what is the biggest mistake you see a lot of competitors do?
Oh, the biggest mistake that I see a lot of competitors do, I think it's being impatient and jumping into it too early when they don't have the amount of muscle mass that they need. Because when you diet down, you really see how much muscle mass you actually have. And you usually feel like you have more before you start dieting. So, just not taking the time.
Yeah, especially if it's like you might feel like you have like huge legs, huge glutes, but that's actually where just your body fat has been held and you strip it back and there's literally nothing left. Moving a little bit away from bodybuilding now, you also have a lot of knowledge surrounding women's menstrual cycle, and our actually number one performing episode is with Tia Myers, the naturopath in Gold Coast. Out of every single episode we've done, every single guest, that is our top performing. So people obviously love to hear about women's cycles because we all go through it and we all have times throughout our lives where we struggle with it. What would you say kind of like leads people to losing their cycle? Is it obviously going to be PCOS, endometriosis, training, stress? What are the biggest factors you see as to why people lose their cycle?
Yeah, so it can obviously come down to conditions like PCOS, as you said, but there's a number of different factors. Like stress is the biggest one. And I think that stress, it comes in so many different ways as well. So people might think, oh, I'm not stressed, but they might have a really physical job. They might do HIIT training every single morning. They might only be eating 1,500 calories a day. Like your body is in a state of stress just from that. And it can be emotional and psychological stress as well. Like maybe, you're not in a good job. Like maybe you've got a terrible boss, or maybe you're in a toxic relationship. Like all these different things are types of stresses. Something that I see a lot of in my period recovery clients is sometimes like when I've got them to a position where I know their food intake is sufficient, I know that like their training is at a good level for period recovery. It's not until they take themselves out of a stressful situation that then all of a sudden, bang, their period comes back. So that is a massive one. Obviously, nutrition and like malnutrition is a big one. I think a lot of women have had a history of undereating, which, means undereating as a whole. Undereating in dietary fats, including like saturated fat, is actually really important for our cycle, and other micronutrients as well. So I think that can be a massive factor, as well as, obviously overtraining. And basically all of these things can cause like depletion of your hormones, which is another cause.
Can you explain the difference between, a lot of people think if I eat fat, I'm going to get fat, but actually healthy fats are so important for hormone balance. Can you kind of give a little bit of education as to why that is the case?
Yeah, so healthy fats help. They're like building blocks of our hormones, essentially. Like we need that. A lot of our hormones are built from like fat-soluble vitamins as well. So it is really important that we're getting enough fat in our diet. And fats don't make you fat. It's about your energy balance. So like calories in versus calories out. But in saying that, if you want to get your period back, you probably want to be making sure you're eating at least maintenance to really kind of get your body to feel safe as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So how would you navigate getting a client's period back? Is it a long period of time you find, or everyone is so different?
Yeah, it's very, very different. In terms of how to navigate it, I very much believe, because it can come from all different places. It could be stress, it could be malnutrition, it could even be like low thyroid function. There's so many different things that could be the cause. I always like to start with pathology testing, so actually getting blood work done and trying to figure out, okay, like what's the actual cause of this shutdown? Is it at a pituitary level, like in your brain, or is it just purely like your hormones are just super depleted from a comp prep, for example? So yeah, there's obviously a bunch of different factors, and you really need to figure out the cause before you start thinking about like what supplements are going to help to bring it back, because otherwise like you're just kind of throwing random things at it and hoping for the best.
Yeah. And then when it does fix, you don't really know why. And then if it happens again, you kind of got to go through that whole process because you actually didn't find the trigger in the first place. How much does your menstrual cycle, especially as females, impact your training and recovery? Because there's obviously two sides and there's going to always be different opinions. But what's your opinion on training with your cycle?
Yeah, I think it definitely impacts your ability to perform and your energy as well in your training sessions. So I think at the end of the day, and my biggest message with training around your menstrual cycle is listen to your body, because I think everyone is so different as to like how they feel and how bad they feel. And also even cycle to cycle, it's different how bad you feel. Like I know you recently mentioned that you had a really bad cycle, whereas usually you're fine.
Yeah.
And same with me. Sometimes I can train on my period. Sometimes I do have a day where I'm in a lot of pain and I'll move my training day. So it's really just about like navigating what is presented right in front of you. You don't have to not train because you're menstruating, but if you're not feeling up to it, do something lighter or make that your rest day and move it around.
Yeah, and a lot of people overcomplicate it too. It's like just get to that week, see how you feel. If you want to train, go train. If you don't train. It's not the end of the world, and it can feel like that if it's coming up repetitively each month. And if you notice yourself like that, it is really painful every single month. It's just knowing, okay, that week I'm going to yoga, I'm doing Pilates, I'm doing a lot lighter movements on my body that still make me feel good. I'm still moving my body, but I'm not going for half marathon training or high rocks training or something so intense that is a little bit like unmanageable through that phase. What is the best way to manage those PMS symptoms and cravings?
Yeah, it's a tough one because, I mean, it's obviously going to happen to a degree regardless. But I think in terms of managing the PMS symptoms, like, yeah, obviously making little switches to your training. Like if I know that my cycle's coming up and I know I've got a really hard HIIT session to do for my high rocks training and I know I'm probably not going to feel great, I'll just move it earlier in the week so I can get it ticked off before it hits. In terms of managing like your energy, I would really focus on like sleep and recovery in that later half of your cycle. If you're not feeling great, like sleep is king. Saunas can be really good as well. Depends on the person. Heat tolerance might not be as good. And for cravings, honestly, upping the fats in your diet is going to help you feel a lot more satiated. And also just even looking at doing a diet break if you can. So increasing your calories for a few days rather than just trying to like keep them low, then you end up overeating anyway. So it's not really that productive. Yeah, just taking a diet break if you need or a deload.
Yeah, that is some good advice. With bodybuilding, kind of like tying it back, a lot of coaches say, or you hear within the industry, to try and get off birth control because it's either harder to gain muscle, harder to lose weight. Is that true?
Yeah, I think this is a really complicated question to answer because obviously the reasons why women go on birth control is not just because of what it makes their body look like, right? So obviously I fully respect anyone's decision to be on birth control. In my experience, I have found that generally women do find improvements in their body composition when they're not on hormonal birth control. I find that a lot of women find it much easier to get lean through their legs, to build muscle as well. There is some research that suggests being on like estrogen-based contraceptives like the pill, for example, can reduce recovery. So potentially that's why. Potentially it's because of lowered testosterone in your bloodstream. Maybe that's playing a role as to the ability to build muscle. But yeah, I have seen that it does tend to impact people to a degree. Doesn't mean you can't do it. My first few seasons of competing, I was on the pill. So it's not that you can't do it, but I think it does make it a little bit harder.
And it also depends on the person. Like you said, some girls, like they wouldn't even know they're on the pill and they've been on it for years. Doesn't make a difference. And then other girls, like myself personally, I've tried so many different ones, but in the matter of like 1 month, I know that I'm on it. Like I just feel internally so different. So it's just like managing with yourself, with your coach, what that kind of looks like. And obviously bodybuilding is the extreme. If you're just a normal client who's trying to lose weight, it's not really going to impact that as much. It's probably the extreme stages of bodybuilding where those few percents actually do make quite a big difference. Going into just like general coaching, what is like a big fitness myth that you have kind of like a lot of girls that come to you that maybe it's around like carbs or training or anything like that? Does anything come up like regularly?
I feel like I still get a lot of, I don't want to lift heavy because I don't want to get bulky. Do you feel like you still get a lot of that?
No, but I get if I stop like doing cardio, I'm going to gain fat, which I think is still very common within the industry, but I actually don't get that.
Yeah, no, I still have people very scared of lifting too intense or too heavy because they're worried about getting bulky in certain areas, which obviously is not the case. But yeah, attachment to cardio is also a big one, and low calories as well.
Yeah, especially low carbs.
Yes.
That's a huge one. If I say like we're going over 200, some people like freak out, but knowing that is going to actually help so much more. And then probably as soon as you eat more, you naturally just going to get more hungrier. You're going to train harder, all of those things. And I find the coolest thing is actually when a client realizes that, I'm like, oh my gosh, it actually is working what you say. I'm like, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What supplements do you recommend taking?
I think this really depends on the person. I don't really like to blanket prescribe supplements to everyone. I think that your supplements should be dependent on like either your pathology or your symptoms. So there should be a reason for why we're giving somebody a supplement. I think, the most common like blanket one that I think a lot of bodybuilders take and prescribe is creatine. It is a great supplement. Like, do you need it? Not necessarily, but I think it's helpful because obviously it's hard to get enough creatine just from our diet alone. It's that extra 1% in terms of training performance and potential muscle growth. So yeah, that's a common one. It's always great to have like enough omega-3s in your diet. So fish oil if you're not eating enough omega-3s, and there's so many great supplements, but it depends on what you're lacking, right?
Yeah, that is very true. Because a lot of time people just go, okay, I need magnesium, I need vitamin C, I need creatine, I need L-carnitine. They think that all of those are actually going to fix and make them progress so much faster. End of the day, like you said, they're the 1%ers. The main thing that's going to help you within your journey is eating the right foods, training, and getting enough sleep. Like literally the most basics, which people hate hearing because they tend to be the hardest ones.
Yeah.
So it's the supplements are there to aid what you are lacking, but not excel your performance in any way possible.
Yeah.
FODBODS is an Aussie company founded by Vanessa. She spent years suffering from gut issues, feeling like everything she ate made her bloated. There was a lot of anxiety around food. She wanted to create healthy snacks from 100% natural ingredients that not only taste amazing, but are completely gut friendly.
FODBODS are 100% natural, plant-based, gluten-free, and their protein bars are the only Monash certified low FODMAP ones in the world.
Their products are dietitian formulated and have amazing macros packed with protein, fiber, and healthy fats to keep you full for long.
The best part is that FODBOD tastes incredible like real food. Many people say, I don't normally like protein bars, but FODBODs are different.
You guys know how busy Tori and I have been lately, and Papa Macros have been a time saver. They are a meal prep company that delivers ready-to-go meals straight to your door.
One thing that we love most is their clean ingredients, not using any seed oils or preservatives, which can be common amongst ready-to-go meals. The macros are incredible and they have over 70 meals on the menu with different categories to fit your current goals.
Lucky for you, we have partnered with Papa Macros, so if you're struggling with meal prep, poor on time, or just wanting to switch it up, they are the perfect addition to your weekly plan. Just use code RAWREALITY for a discount on your next order. And you'll never get tired of eating the same meals as they update their menu every month, so the variety is never ending. We hope you enjoy.
Deloads. I've had this question quite recently and asking when a client should deload, how long they should deload for, and why they come up. I'm very much someone who doesn't really like plan deloads. I kind of do it when the client needs it. It will never be end of 8 weeks or end of 16 weeks. Because, for example, in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm kind of using the cruise as more of like a deload because that was like, I'm on a boat. I'm not going to be training as intensely. But then I got sick this week. So I had a whole week off training. So then I'm like, well, then if I also don't train then, that's technically 2 weeks of a deload within the space of 1 month. So that's why I don't really necessarily like to plan deloads because I'm like, okay, well, when am I getting sick? When am I busy? I'll use that time instead.
Yeah, I'm very much of the same view. I don't really like to plan deloads, especially I think with women as well, because obviously there's things like with our menstrual cycle, tying back into that, like some months we might just feel super depleted and we just can't train as hard. And that's a great time to just implement a deload if we're really struggling and just listening to the client biofeedback rather than scheduling them. I think that a lot of like the teaching around deloads and, you know, scheduling them every 8 or 12 weeks or whatnot, a lot of the research on training, it is all done on men. So we kind of forget that women's bodies are different and we do experience, I think, a lot more fluctuations in terms of our performance and our energy levels. So yeah, I'm exactly the same as you. I like to just kind of play it by ear and implement them when I feel like a client needs one rather than scheduling it. I think the only exception would be maybe like powerlifting. So if you're working in cycles of that, I think because of how high strain that could be on your nervous system, you might need to follow some more regimented deloads, but yeah, not for bodybuilding.
What would you say the signs are of a client who needs that deload coming up?
So increase in fatigue and like decrease in performance in the gym, like feeling weak in the gym. You might be struggling with things like sleep. You might be getting like some niggles or injuries and sore spots. Extra hunger as well could even be a sign that you might need a deload, like your body's just kind of not very happy. Bunch of different things.
And my last like general question for fitness before we move into online coaching is, can you build muscle and run at the same time? This is actually a question I get all the time, even though I'm not a runner, but within like my coaching, I find a lot of clients are also incorporating running or high rocks training. Do you find you can still grow muscle because you've obviously moved into that yourself?
Yeah, I feel like this is such a hard question to answer without upsetting people. Obviously, so I've been doing a lot more running because I've been doing the high rocks, which is really just something for me to train for now that I'm not competing. But I think that if you are running, it is not optimal for building muscle. It doesn't mean that you can't do both, especially if you're relatively new to the fitness space. I think, you'll probably still build some muscle while also running and improving your cardio fitness. But in order to be like really elite at one of these two things, you probably really want it to be the priority. So as a bodybuilder, for example, like if your goal is to bodybuild, to win a pro card and to be really, really successful as a bodybuilder, like you're probably not going to be running as well because you know it's going to take away from it. The fatigue in your legs is going to affect your performance in the gym somewhat. Even if you manage it as best you can, like if you took it out, you might not think it's affecting your performance, but if you took it out, you'd probably get a couple of extra percentage of performance in the gym sessions, right? So the long story short is I do think it does impact it somewhat.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't do both though. And if you have a lifestyle goal, like you don't need that extra 2% of muscle that you could have built, right? Yeah. So just do what makes you happy.
And it's also actually utilizing strength training to help your running because you need strength training to make sure like your glutes are active or like you've got stronger obliques and your calves are good. Like literally those little things help your running. So it's not just looking at the gym as like, well, if I can't grow muscle, there's no point even training. It's like that is actually going to benefit you so much and probably prevent you from a lot of injuries as well.
Yeah. Well, when I was young, I used to run a lot and I would always have the sorest knees when I would run. But now because I have that strength foundation behind me, like, yes, I've still had some niggles putting that impact through my body, but like my knees don't hurt when I run at all because I have the strength in my glutes and my quads and my hammies to support that.
Yeah, it does make a big difference.
Yeah.
Moving into online coaching and that space, take us through your journey of like where you started and how you got into running your own business.
Yeah, so I started working as a receptionist at Fitness First in Knox City, if anyone knows where that is.
Yeah.
And I was just doing reception there when I was at uni studying business and law. And then when I decided to go down the PT route, I moved into the city and started working at Fitness First in Richmond. And that's where I started my PT business, which was, 2014, I think. And so... yeah, that was where I kind of started and I was a full-time PT in the gym. So my business grew very quickly to the point where, I was doing like 40 plus sessions a week, that standard PT grind in the gym, split shifts. And naturally, it just kind of evolved into more online coaching. I kind of tracked my journey through competing on Instagram back then and started to get inquiries from people like overseas and things. So I was like, oh, well, I better do some online coaching.
Yeah.
And then, that naturally just grew and grew and grew to the point that obviously COVID, I couldn't work in a gym. So that, I guess, was kind of the catalyst to when I started thinking about going completely online. And so now I just operate online, but I've got 2 coaches that work with me in the business and they still do PT in Melbourne as well.
Yeah. Do you feel like you got really ahead of the online coaching space? Because I feel like through COVID, it definitely boomed. But previously, like I did not know many people that did online coaching.
Yeah. I mean,
Unless I
guess
just was completely out of the space.
Yeah, I've honestly never really thought about it, but probably yes. Like I do feel as though like when I was in that gym environment, I was probably one of the only PTs in that gym that did do online coaching as well. So I think I probably did start doing it in the early days where it was kind of starting to become a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you recommend people do face-to-face before moving into online, or do you think these days you can go straight into online and then not be a worry?
I do think there is a lot of benefit to working face-to-face because you get to see how different people's bodies move because it's so interesting just watching people with different lever lengths and things and how they execute movements and how they need like slight variations to a movement pattern. Like, for example, with a squat, if you elevate your heels to help you get that extra bit of depth, if you have really long femurs or something like that. It's really hard to learn that just online. I think as well, though, like you did Body Fit for a while, like that sort of environment, you're still seeing how different people's bodies move. So even if it's group-based, it doesn't have to be one-on-one, but I think seeing that in real life helps.
Yeah, and a lot of the time group coaching classes, the company makes you learn as well, so you can also be the best possible coach. So there were so many seminars I did, and we had like a Monday meeting, and like the head trainer would take us through a lot of the movements for that week and make sure we knew like progressions, and then also like if they couldn't do that exercise, what to do. If I did not do that, I honestly think I would not be the coach I am now because I would have absolutely no idea I wouldn't even know to elevate heels because I just did not really learn that in my Cert 3 and 4. I knew all of my stuff from Cert 3 and 4, I just like knew myself from going to the gym and things like that. Like my mum's listening to this and I love her, but she did her Cert 3 and there's absolutely no way she could coach a gym class at all. So it's just, I find that just really helps you elevate your coaching that little bit more. Going back in the years, what would you say, not a protocol, a system that you did back then that you would never do now? Was there like check-ins that was super slow or your payment system were all over the place?
Oh, system that I did that I would never do now. Well, I did do all of my programs on Excel and print them out and like handwrite their sets and reps
Oh my
in the
gosh.
gym. That's how long I've been doing this for. We didn't have training apps back then. Yeah, so that's what I used to do. And yeah, I wouldn't do that now. I also think in terms of delivering a program, I know some coaches do still use Excel sheets, which I think can be really good for different types of data, but clients really want app delivered programs now. It's so much easier for them in the gym. So yeah, I wouldn't go back to spreadsheets for my training programs.
It's even just like if you click on something, you've entered it wrong, the entered box and the formula disappears and you're like, oh my gosh, like it's so frustrating.
And like videos as well. Like you can get a video demo in an app, but you can't get that in a spreadsheet. I mean, you could link it, I guess, but that's a lot of like, fluffing around.
It also takes away that like extra little admin as a coach when you already have that video in there because like an exercise could be labeled and maybe they used to call it something different and you're like, I have no idea what that is. Then you have to send them a video, but having that already embedded in the app makes the biggest difference.
Yeah.
What are 3 top tips you have for anyone looking to start online coaching?
So I think nowadays where there is so many different systems out there and so much technology you can utilize within your business is like get your systems right from the get-go because it is an absolute shit show. Am I allowed to swear here?
Yeah, you're good.
Trying to change your systems when you're established and you have a lot of clients. Like I know I've been through this and I am pretty sure you went through this as well, didn't you? Yeah. So it's just so hard when you're full of clients. Like get them right from the get-go. That would be tip number 1. Tip number 2 would be like really understand like what your zone of genius is. So your zone of genius is like, what do you have experience with? Like, what have you learned through your own fitness journey that you can then like empower others with that knowledge? Or what's your area that you're like done extra study and are extremely interested in, like women's hormones, for example? Like, what is the area that you are so good at that is going to set you apart from other coaches? Like understand that because that's going to help you to understand like your ideal client.
That's why I actually went to you was because I heard in Melbourne 3 years ago that you were really good with women's hormones. Yeah. That was like the number 1. I was like, I need a prep coach who understands that. So it's like that zone of genius brought me to you. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, it does make a difference.
Love that. Yeah. That's a massive foundation of everything I do, like keeping my clients really healthy, even in extreme sports. And then lastly, I would just say like be your authentic self because I think it's so easy as a fitness coach now thinking, okay, what content am I going to do? I'm going to go look at this fitness coach. Okay, they did this. I'm going to do that too. You need to stand out. Like if you do that, if you just copy people, you're just going to blend in. Like, yeah, there's a time and a place to take inspiration, obviously. You can still do that. But just like honestly show up really authentically because that's what people will kind of really resonate with and be drawn to you by, like getting to know like you and your actual personal values.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that last one because at the end of the day, everyone knows, well, a lot of coaches know the same thing, right? So it's like what people actually coming to you for you, like people are coming to me. I know the same as let's say Sally over here, but people are coming to me because of what I post on socials. They've been following me for years. Like they want me to coach them with that same information that everyone else has. So you are your brand at the end of the day. How do you set boundaries within your coaching space? Because that's something I really struggled with first because started and I was like, I'm going to reply all the time because I'm going to be the best coach ever. Reply Saturday, 9 p.m. so they know that I'm like on their attention. That was the worst thing I've ever done for my business. Yeah. Because those lines got like skewed. How do you set boundaries within your business?
Yeah, it's something I've definitely struggled with as well. I think it's really hard as well when you're really passionate because it's like you just want to do it. It doesn't necessarily feel like work. Yeah. But at the end of the day, if you never take time to switch off, like you're going to experience that burnout. So you do need to have boundaries. I will say, like, I still do reply to my clients at random times. Yes. Like, I will often be replying at 6 a.m. or it could be at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night if I'm not doing anything and I just open my phone and I do. But I am really strict with myself that when I take my switch off time, like, I take it and I do make sure that I switch off. So I'm not super strict on the times that I reply because I don't like working 9 to 5. I would rather work like 6 till 12 and then go train and then do some more hours. Like I'm happy to be flexible with that, but I do make sure I take time to switch off.
I think that's the important part is not feeling like the client is reliant on you 24/7. So it's knowing like I may reply on the Saturday, but then like when I'm taking my time off, that is my time off. And they accept that, because I've known a few coaches who they even want to take 1 week over Christmas, and their client will look, I don't know what I'm going to do without you. So it's like actually allowing the client to not be like codependent almost, with still allowing yourself to take the time off. So with your coaching, what do you reckon is one of the most rewarding things you see overall, and then like one specific moment too?
I feel like the most rewarding thing overall is really seeing how you've like changed people's lives. So, you know, when clients give you the feedback that, you know, you've really improved like their ability to eat out socially without anxiety, and like you've completely changed their relationship with their body. They no longer feel like they can't wear certain clothes or that they have to restrict themselves to feel good. Like those sorts of things are the most rewarding things. I mean, I also love seeing clients like succeed at bodybuilding and win pro cards or win shows. Like that's amazing too. But yeah, it's that life-changing stuff is really incredible. Specific standout moments, there would be so many that it's so hard to mention just one. But something like recently that was a massive standout moment was just running the BeFit 10th birthday event for our 10-year anniversary.
That looked incredible. Yeah.
It was just so nice to like have everyone together and just really kind of see the community that I've built over these years, and like all the girls like connecting. Like I'm just so grateful to have such incredible women like within the team, that everyone's just so nice and lovely to each other. So yeah, that was super rewarding for me, seeing that it's like, oh, I built that. Like how incredible. Yeah.
That is amazing. What do you think separates a good coach from a great coach? Similar to what I said before with a bodybuilder client, but flip it into a coach.
Yeah, so I think a good coach like knows how to execute a training plan and a nutrition plan to get a client like a physical result. I think a great coach is one that goes beyond that and actually really gets to understand like the client's lifestyle, the client's personality, and therefore like what they're going to actually respond best to, and making a plan that like works for them, because I really believe that no two people need the exact same protocol. Like there's going to be differences, and people can handle different training loads and different deficit extremes and things like that. Like it needs to work with the person. And if you're working with Gen Pop clients as well, like having an understanding that some people are mums that also have a job and they need something that works in with their lifestyle. It's not something that's impossible to achieve.
Yeah, 100%. It's also like you were like my mentor for a few comp prep clients, and I was like in the group chats and seeing all their protocols, and even just going from like my prep to their prep, I don't think if I truly was in theirs, I wouldn't understand how different protocols would be. Yeah. Because I would just assume my Cal's, that was kind of like as low as you get, they got way lower, or like their cardio maybe wasn't as tense, or whatever it may be. Your coaching style is so different to every single athlete, and I think that's what makes you a great coach, is because you actually understand the individual and who they are to get them the result they need. Yeah. You've now kind of pivoted, you still do your coaching, but now you're going into online coaching and business coaching to help individuals start up their online coaching. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so obviously I am still coaching, absolutely, but I also have been mentoring other fitness coaches in their fitness businesses. And I guess this is just kind of like, again, a natural evolution for me. I did have a lot of my clients, including yourself, that kind of reached out to me wanting advice on like where to start with their own fitness business or how to be a good coach. Like they wanted to learn and understand like my systems and how I coach my clients. Also, I obviously have brought coaches on within my team, so I've really like kind of trained them up in that sense as well. So I guess it was just kind of a natural evolution that so many people were asking me for it that I was like, well, I better do this. But yeah, like I really love that as well, because at the end of the day, like I love educating people, and I also am really passionate about this industry, and I think there's room for many, many fantastic coaches, and I'd love to see an increase in like quality of coaches and also tenure of coaches in the industry, because a lot of people don't last very long in this space. So giving coaches the right foundation of their business to make sure that they're building their business right from the get-go to actually be successful. I guess my business background as well comes into this. So I'm kind of really utilizing that in helping people realize, hey, you're a business owner, you're not just a fitness coach. Like you have to be both.
Yeah. And even just having those years and years and years of experience of like what went well, what didn't went well, and knowing that from a start as like a startup person helps so entirely much. Like there's things that I did at the start that I would not do now, but equally there's so much that I missed that I wouldn't, how do I put that? Like so much I didn't do that I'm glad I didn't, because like you told me or another business coach taught me, and I was like, okay, if I did that, probably wouldn't be where I am now. So it helps you just like get a head start so much. You're also now starting to do like a few seminars that are going to be like on the upcoming, which is so exciting. Do you want to speak on that too?
Yeah, so got a seminar coming up. I don't have too many details to share just yet, but in May, looking to run one in Gold Coast and Melbourne, and Lily is going to be a special guest.
Yes.
But yeah, that'll be directed at like people that are wanting to be fitness coaches or new fitness coaches in the industry that want to kind of learn more about that space.
Which is going to be so valuable. Like even if you have a coaching business, it's like come and learn like 3 things or one thing, and that can even transform your business. I think especially as a coach, continuing to learn and evolve your own styles is actually what makes you a good coach to a great coach, and it makes a big difference. Kind of like closing everything off, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
This question, I always struggle with this question. So, okay, I have a pretty strong belief that I will let life take me where I'm meant to go as well. So I always have an idea of the direction I want to go, but I don't necessarily have like a really solid vision like I think some people do. Yeah. I know I will still be coaching. I know that I will still be mentoring other coaches in their fitness businesses. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, to be honest, but I know I'll still be doing this because I love it.
And life changes so fast as well. Like what you're probably doing this time last year, maybe not even be on your radar. Your goal is for this year. So it's also like having that overall vision like you have, and then just going with the flow for the rest of it. Because if you put too many deadlines on yourself, well, then you're actually probably not going to be able to evolve or grow as much as you could.
Yeah.
2 little things we always end our podcast with is number 1, what is a quote you live by?
So a quote that I live by recently is life happens for me. And I'm very much trying to lean into that and just believe that like everything that happens is for my benefit. Even if it doesn't feel it at the time, like even if it feels like it's a negative thing, just believing that actually it's taking me exactly where I need to go. And it's actually brings you a lot of peace leaning into that quote, I think.
A lot of the time as well, I found within my life, my worst moments, obviously they're horrible in the time, but 3 years later, 6 months later, end up being the best.
Yeah.
Like maybe going through a breakup, or you have to move houses or move states, or maybe a work didn't go through, you didn't get that job career. It all leads you on the path that you're meant to be. So I love that quote as well. And finally, if you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be?
I would probably tell my younger self to, like trust your gut and trust your intuition, and also just trust that the way that your path is unfolding is what's meant for you. Because, I definitely didn't think I was going to be an online coach. Like this was never on my radar, but I'm so glad that this is where I am. Like I said at the start, I wanted to be a lawyer. Yeah. So I think that you have to trust that, I got that job part-time in a gym and I was in that environment and I was like, oh, actually, I really like this. And that kind of like turned my whole world on its head, because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. My whole family wanted me to be a lawyer. And I took a leap of faith and started something completely different, and it absolutely paid off. Like I couldn't be happier doing something that I'm so passionate about. So trust what you're drawn to. Yeah, I love that. And where can everyone find you on socials? Yeah, so my main Instagram is Bec_BeFit. And then I've also got the Team BeFit page and the BeFit Academy page, but just go for the personal page and then
and you'll find
the
everything
others.
there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today's podcast. I'm sure everyone got a lot of value from it, and everyone's been wanting it for a long time, so I'm sure they'll absolutely love it.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, no worries at all.
Huge thanks to FODBODS for sponsoring today's episode. Don't forget to use our code RAW15, that's RAW15, which will save you 15% off all products.